Okay, so in this linear equation, I want you to notice that there are no parentheses in this equation and there are no fractions. And so this is the easy kind, so where you have no parentheses or no fractions. Now I want you to notice though, is that on the left side and on the right side, you have some terms that are like terms. So for example, you see the 6x and this negative x, those are like terms. And so you want to combine those. And so really all you need to do is look at their coefficients. So the coefficient of this x is 6, and the coefficient of this x is negative 1. And so 6x and a negative 1x is 5x. So I have 5x plus 4 equals, and over here, if you notice the like terms are these constants. So a negative 6 plus 1 is a negative 5. So I get 2x minus 5. All right, so in this problem so far we have that this equation, this linear equation, is equivalent to this linear equation. So whatever the solutions are to this linear equation will be the solutions to the original. And now what you notice is that on this left side you have the term 5x and you have the term 4. And on this side, you have 2x and negative 5. So whenever you want to solve a linear equation, and we are dealing with linear equations, the idea is to get the variables to one side, constants to the other. And so let's just go ahead in this case and bring the variables to the left side. So when I bring the variables to the left side, remember you have to do the opposite. And what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So what I do to the left side, I do to the other. And that's where you're going to use the properties of equality. Equality. And so in this case, if I subtract 2x, that's going to give me 0. And that's what you want to do. So you see, if you added 2x, that would not help you because 2x plus 2x is 4x. So you need to subtract 2x. But what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. And notice I'm aligning my like terms. And also notice that when I subtracted 2x, I subtracted 2x once from the left side, from the right side, and then once from the right side, left side, excuse me. And so 5x minus 2x is 3x. So remember here I'm combining like terms. Combine like terms. So remember that phrase. And so when I combine like terms, I get 5x minus 2x is 3x plus 4 equals, and then on this side, 2x minus 2x, that's 0, and 0 negative 5 is a negative 5. All right, so now the next step is to bring the constants to the other side. So see where over here I'm adding 4 to this 3x? So you have to do the opposite. So the opposite of adding 4 is to subtract 4. So notice I subtracted 4 from the left side, and I subtracted 4 from the right side. And then I can combine like terms. So you can basically combine like terms quite often. So 4 and a negative 4, that's 0. So I get 3x is equal to a negative 4 and a negative 5 is a negative 9. And then remember, to get the variable x by itself, you can divide both sides by the coefficient. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So let me just go ahead and write it here. So 3x equals negative 9. Then we're going to divide both sides by 3, and then 3 divided by 3 is 1. 1 times x is x, and then negative 9 divided by 3 is a negative 3. So that's your solution. And so notice this is a process we went through. So the process of solving this equation, the original equation, is this. And these are the steps. So on the worksheet or on a test, I do expect you to show all the work. Okay, so don't leave any steps out. If you want the points, you need to show all the steps. Okay, now remember what we said earlier. We said that all these equations are equivalent equations. I'm using the word equivalent. So equivalent equations. And so basically what that means is that the solution to this equation is going to be the solution to this equation. And so all of these equations here, all of those equations have the same solution. These are all equations. They have an equal sign. So it's a statement that has an equal sign, so that's an equation. So you see how this last equation here, you have the variable x by itself. So that equation right here says that x must be negative 3. So that means that this equation here, the solution must be negative 3 also. And then notice 3 times negative 3 is negative 9 right here. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. And then the solution here has to be negative 3. And it is, because watch. 3 times negative 3 is negative 9. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. And that's what that is over here. And then the solution of here should be the same as the solution here. And it is. And then the solution here will be the solution here. Okay? So that's what we mean by equivalent equations. So equivalent equations are equations that have the same solution as you go through the process. Okay, so that's how you solve number 1. All right, let's look at number 2. Okay, so number 2, we have this linear equation. And notice there are no parentheses involved. There are no fractions involved. So again, this is the easy kind. And so if I go ahead and combine like terms, and notice there are quite a few like terms here. So if you look at the terms that involve y to the first power, I have negative 2y, I have a positive y, and I have a positive 4y. And so when I combine those 3 terms, so those 3 terms are like terms, and so when I combine those like terms, I get negative 2y plus y is a negative y. Okay, negative 1 y. So negative 2 and a positive 1 is a negative 1. And a negative 1 and a positive 4y is a positive 3y. So I get 3y. Okay. Now let's look at the constants. So my constants, we have negative 3 and we have a negative 1. So negative 3 and a negative 1 is a negative 4. And so when I combine the like terms on the left side, I ended up with 3y minus 4. And on the right side, there are no like terms. So I'm just going to go ahead and rewrite this over. So a negative y plus 8. Okay? All right, so that is the equation I end up with after this step. Okay, so we still haven't solved the equation, but we're in the process of solving that equation. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other. So let's go ahead and bring the variables to the left-hand side. So right here I have a negative y. So the opposite of a negative y is a positive y. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add y to both sides, and then notice I'm aligning my like terms. Now what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, so you only do one thing at a time. So I'm adding y, I'm going to add y. And then let's combine like terms. So when I combine like terms, I get 3y plus y is 4y. So you get 4y minus 4 equal. And then negative y plus y is 0. So that's 0. And 0 plus 8 is 8. Okay? Now remember, these are all equivalent equations. So the solution to the original will be the solution to this equation, will be the solution to this equation, and so on. Okay, now the next step, since I brought all the variables to one side, so you see I only have the variables on one side now, but I have constants on both sides. So what you want to do is, since I'm subtracting 4, the opposite of subtracting 4 is to add 4. So let's go ahead and add 4 to both sides, and then let's combine like terms. So negative 4 plus 4 is 0. So I get 4y plus 0 is 4y, and then 8 plus 4 is 12. And then the next step is to, let me go ahead and rewrite this over. So the next step is to divide both sides by 4. And notice you can easily say what the solution is here. 4 times 3 is 12, right? Okay, but let's just go ahead and show that step. And so the next step, since I'm multiplying by 4, the opposite is divide by 4. And so notice that 4 divided by 4 is 1. 1 times y is y. So you get y equal 3. So the solution to this equation is y equals 3. Okay? Now, see this equation here? The solution to this equation is y equal 3. So that means the solution to this equation is y equal 3. The solution to this equation is y equal 3, and it is because 4 times 3 is 12. The solution to this equation here is y equal 3 as well. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 minus 4 is 8. And so on. Okay? So that's your solution. So the solution to the original equation is y equals 3. All right, so let's look at number 3. So number 3, we have this. So we go ahead and write number 3 here. So this would be number 3. Okay, so now notice in number 3 we have a linear equation, but in this linear equation we have parentheses now. And so that's where you're going to use the distributive property. And so the idea, first of all, is to get rid of those parentheses using the distributive property. Okay, so remember, distributive property involves multiplication. So you see this, you read this as 2 times x minus 5. So everything inside the parentheses, we multiply by 2. All right, now be careful on this side. So when we get to this side, we're going to discuss this. So sometimes students prefer to use that those arrows to indicate that they're using distributive property. So 2 times x is 2x. 2 times a negative 5 is a negative 10, and then minus 2. Now be careful, the only terms that are being multiplied by this 2 is what's inside the parentheses. So this negative 2 is not being multiplied by this 2. So just bring it down. Equal, and then let's go ahead and rewrite this for right now. So we're trying to be a little bit careful here. Okay, now let's talk about this right here. So some students mess up, and what they'll do is they'll say 4 plus 3 is 7, and then they'll distribute the 7. That's not correct. Okay, so remember the order of operations. So remember the order of operations, and some of you remember it as please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. All right, so notice that multiplication has higher priority than addition. So you see this is addition right here, but this is multiplication right here. So I've got to do multiplication first. So you must use the distributive property first. So don't make the mistake and say 4 plus 3 is 7 and then distribute the 7. That is not a correct mathematical step. So you're going to do all this work and you're going to get the wrong solution. All right, so let's go ahead and rewrite this over. So I have 2x minus 10 minus 2 equal, and then 4. Now let's go ahead and distribute the 3. 3 times 2x is 6x, so I get 4 plus 6x, and then 3 times a negative 1 is a negative 3. All right, so now that kind of looks like a previous problem. It kind of looks like something like number 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and combine like terms on each side. So notice on the left side, I can combine the negative 2 and the negative 10. Now be careful, this is a negative 10 and this is a negative 2. All right, so negative 10 and a negative 2 is a negative 12. So I get 2x minus 12 equals, and then over here, if I combine like terms, my like terms here are these constants. Those are my like terms, those constants. And so I get 6x, and then 4 and a negative 3 is a positive 1. Okay? All right, now we're going to bring, remember these are linear equations. So we're going to bring all the variables to one side, constants to the other. Now, many students know that in this case, it may be a little bit easier to bring the variables to the right-hand side now, because 6 is larger than 2. And so if you subtract 2x from both sides, I'm just going to kind of do it like this. Subtract 2x and then subtract 2x. See, 6x minus 2x is 4x. All right? And so some students do that because they prefer to deal with positive coefficients. But what I want to do, though, is just, because some of you are going to do this, and so I'm going to go ahead and do what I'm about to do. Let's just go ahead and bring the variables to the left side. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract 6x from both sides. And then notice, though, what's going to happen is that when I combine like terms, I get 2x minus 6x is a negative 4x. And then minus 12 equals, this is 0, and then 1. All right. Now notice at every step, if you go back at every problem we just did, I did one thing at a time. Do not do too many operations at once. Okay? So don't be too lazy about this. Just go ahead and do one thing at a time. Okay, so now the next step when solving a linear equation at this point, since I already have the variable on one side by itself, the term rather, by itself, let's go ahead and get rid of this constant. So right now I'm subtracting 12. The opposite is to add 12. And always think about this. The reason why you're adding 12 is because you want this to be a 0. And a negative 12 plus 12 is 0. But what I do to one side, I do to the other. And so notice I get negative 4x equals 1 plus 12 is 13. And then let me go ahead and rewrite this over. Okay, now the next step is to notice that, now You see how in the previous problem it was pretty easy to determine right away that 4 times 3 is 12, and so your solution was 3. For some students, it may be a little bit more difficult to determine what the solution is here, because this is now going to be an integer. All right, so let's kind of do the step. So right now, multiplying by -4, multiplying x by -4, the opposite of multiplication is division. So let's go ahead and divide both sides by -4. A -4 divided by -4 is 1. 1 times x is x. So you want to say x here. X equal. And then here, this cannot be reduced. If you could, you would, though. You would go ahead and reduce. And so I could just get -13/4. Now, if you want to write this as a mixed number, because remember, this is an improper fraction. If you want to write this as a mixed number, you can go ahead and do that. 4 into 13 is 3. 3 times 4 is 12. Subtract, you get 1. And so this is, so 13/4 is 3 1/4. So -13/4 then will be -3 1/4. Okay, so either one is fine. All right, so that was number 3. And then finally, let's look at number 4. So number 4, we have this for number 4. So we have okay, so we have this linear equation. So lots of parentheses involved here. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and use the distributive property to get rid of those parentheses. So I don't have any fractions, so that's a good thing. So all I need to do is use the distributive property first. That's your first step, is to use the distributive property. But notice that I'm going to use the distributive property 1, 2, and 3 times. Okay? So I'm going to use the distributive property 3 times. So let's go ahead and do each one. So let's go ahead and do this one first. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2 is 6. So that one was easy, right? Now let's get this one. So let's distribute the -2. Remember that even though you're subtracting 2 times, you can also think of this as adding the opposite. So this is really adding a -2 times this. So distribute the -2. -2 times 3x is -6x. And -2 times a -1, negative times a negative is a positive, so that's +2, plus 2, equal, and then 4x minus 3. Remember, all I'm going to do is get rid of those parentheses. Now, you see right here, I'm subtracting this parentheses right here, these terms that's inside the parentheses. Remember, though, if you want to, you can think of this as a -1. So you're really distributing a -1 here. So -1 times 6x is a -6x, and a -1 times a +1 is a -1. You could have also thought of this, before I put that 1 there, you could have also thought of this as subtracting this polynomial as adding the opposite. So the opposite of 6x is -6x. The opposite of a +1 is a -1. Okay? All right, now let's combine like terms. So let's do the variable terms first. So 3x, a -6x, those are my like terms in terms of the variables on this side. So 3x and a -6x is a -3x. Okay, now let's do the constants. So constant 6 plus 4 plus 2, right? So 6 plus 2 is 8. 8 plus 2 is 10. So you all agree that's going to be -3x plus 10? Equal? Let's go on this side. So 4x and a -6x is a -2x. A -3 and a -1 is a -4. All right? And so notice all of these are equivalent equations. So if I want to find the solution to this equation, I'm going to use some properties to get some simpler equations that are equivalent. So this equation is equivalent to this equation. And so that one looks a little bit better than this one. That equivalent equation looks a little bit better than this. You see, it's getting a little bit easier to kind of determine what the solution is. So now over here, I'm going to bring all the variables to one side and all the constants to the other. So let's go ahead and add 2x to both sides, just like this. And so remember, the reason why I'm adding 2x and subtracting 2x, if you were to subtract 2x, that would not help you, because a -2x and a -2x is a -4x. You want this to be a 0. Okay, so you got to think about its opposite. So the opposite of negative 2x is a positive 2x. So you're going to add 2x to both sides. Now notice what you do to one side, you do to the other. Okay, so negative 3x and 2x, I'm combining like terms. Negative 2x and 3x and 2x is a negative 1x, or just negative x. Plus 10 equal, this is 0, negative 4. 0 and negative 4 is a negative 4. Now let's go ahead and subtract 10 from both sides, and then combine like terms again. This is 0, 10 and negative 10 is 0. So this time I get negative x is equal to negative 14, because a negative 4 and a negative 10 is a negative 14. Now again, if you have a little bit trouble with signed numbers, use your calculator. So notice you have negative 4, right? So remember, this is your negative button. Make sure you're using negative, not subtraction. So negative 4 plus a negative 10 gives you negative 14. All right, so use your calculator if you're having a little bit of issue remembering your rules for signed numbers. Now be careful. The answer is not, the solution of these equations up here is not negative 14, because that's not what x is. Negative x is equal to negative 14. All right, so what I would do next is I would rewrite this over. Now remember, what this says is that the opposite of x is a negative 14. So whatever the opposite of this is, that's going to be negative 14, and what that x is going to be your solution. But what I would do is I would rewrite this as negative 1x is equal to negative 14. And then notice I'm multiplying x by negative 1. So the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1. Remember, you always divide by the coefficient. Don't put an x here. Some students have a habit of doing that. It's not correct. Because if you put an x here, that is not x any longer. That's 1. Okay, so you got to be careful. Always divide by the coefficient. Don't put a variable with it. Don't put that variable with it. And so negative 1 divided by negative 1 is 1. 1 times x is x, equal, and remember, negative divided by negative is a positive. 14 divided by 1 is 14. And so there's your solution. So the solution is 14. So the solution to this equation is 14. The solution to this equation is 14. The solution to this equation is 14, and so on. And so the solution to the original problem is 14. Okay? So that's the value of the variable that will make this side equal to that side. Okay? And it's the only one that's going to work. All right, so that is going to take care of the practice problems for topic 1, part 1.